Let's have a guest on right now. It's Glynn Spangenberg. He's the Chief Commercial Officer over at Locomotion. And, something really interesting about Glenn here is that he started his career a very long time ago when he was a Boy Scout getting merit badges with freight. Glenn, is that true? Or did you start your career all the way back when you were a Boy Scout?
Absolutely. 1973, the Boy Scouts of America came out with the truck transport merit badge. I just fell in love with the industry and spent a bit of time at Matlack Trucking doing evening dispatch, taking collect calls, and writing down where the driver was at, putting it in the white, the board, so that everyone, when they came on, would know where the drivers were. Great start to the industry.
Glenn, how many Pinewood Derbies did you win? You look like a guy who'd own those tracks.
Yeah, I don't know how many I won, but I certainly participated in a whole lot of them. It talked about aerodynamics in the trucking industry and why it matters so much.
That is awesome stuff. Hey, before we jump into it, tell us a little bit, before we tie this into, autonomous trucking, is it true that you copyrighted the first mirrorless truck concept and subsequently lobbied the FMCSA to grant a 5-year mirrorless truck exemption that allowed heavy-duty trucks to operate and remove their physical mirrors? Was that you?
Absolutely. That was me. That was me when everyone was saying it couldn't be done. Why would anyone want to take the mirrors off the truck? Why would the government ever give approval to remove the mirrors? And, I just had a belief that it would be true, and it actually came to pass.
Glenn, I like that you like to do things that people say can't be done. And one of those things is autonomous trucking, right?
Right.
Well, companies need to stop thinking about things that can't be done because it is being done and it is going to happen. So what does it mean to engineer your supply chain for autonomous trucking and be prepared for that?
So that's a certainty. I think the question around the timing and the phasing of it, when it's going to come out, makes a big difference. But today is the day to actually start beginning to engineer the supply chain for autonomous trucks, because autonomous trucks won't be able to just jump on the road and move from the warehouse to your front door and deliver your supplies autonomously. It has to be designed, it has to be engineered so that you can take the most benefit out of the technology as soon as it's available. And I don't mean as soon as it's available to take a driver out of the truck. I mean as soon as it's available for the trucks to get on the road and start testing. They should be hauling freight. They should be hauling freight that you've designed around an autonomous truck network. A lot of money to be made if you do this correctly, and why wait?
So as a shipper, I should be looking at my entire network and seeing how I'm moving different things in order to get ready for this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say as a shipper and a carrier.
Yeah.
So with motor carriers and the Locomotion model, what we're focused on is a platooning model, where the follower vehicle is actually going to be in autonomous mode.
Mm-hmm.
The whole convoy is going to be led by a driver who's cognitively engaged in the process of driving. And as you prepare for that particular implementation, if you do that today, you're going to get 2 loads on a route that you're normally getting 1 load on, which means you're going to get an increase in the yield out of that particular route. You're also going to get better utilization because the vehicles are going to be operating, even though they have drivers in both of the vehicles today, they'll be operating as though they were operating autonomously in a convoy, and you get the benefits of the fuel economy and higher utilization and so forth. So it's worth it today. It'll give you the gains that you're looking for.
Yeah, let's drill a little deeper into what it means for each one of those parties, the carriers, the brokers, and the shippers, to be good partners, to be ready for this incoming wave of autonomous trucks. So let's start with the carriers. What should they be thinking about now? Is there a checklist? If I'm running a fleet, where should my head be at right now?
Yeah, your head should be at what is your freight mix and what does the density look like? What we're finding is that shippers are willing to put in more freight to a carrier who's looking to engineer for an autonomous convoy, where in the past they would give 1 load originating at one particular geography heading to another. They're now willing to ante in 2 particular loads. So if you're a carrier, the question is going to be, can you load enough density into your system to be able to run a convoying application from point to point and essentially relay back and forth and back and forth? A little bit more local activity that's required on each end of the delivery, but that line haul becomes super efficient, and to the point where it could save 30% operating expense, which means profits at that level are going to quadruple. And in trucking, that's a fairly big number. So if you're a carrier, the question is where can we actually get the density to support relay convoys that are automated? And the fact is it's out there. If you look into the network deep enough, you're going to find that you may only have a limited amount of freight. But the truth is we can find more freight from the shipper community that will actually allow you to double up on the amount of freight that you're running, not just then, but today.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I wasn't thinking along those lines as far as that lane balance, right? You've got to be looking at that type of stuff. So what you're referring to there. So let's jump into the broker side of things. What from a broker's side do I really need to be looking at and planning for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say broker 3PL are sort of in that same mix. So a broker is going to be more transactional commodity type of business, but a 3PL is actually going to be planning freight movements very similar to what we do with our algorithm. Our algorithm, instead of planning for one load, for one driver, for one set of assets, it's planning for two. So from a 3PL perspective, they've got a much bigger portfolio of business, shipper business that they're going to be planning toward. And the fact of the matter is if they can sweeten that pie for the motor carrier as well as for the shipper, they also are going to benefit. Everyone in that entire loop is going to benefit. For higher freight, better utilization, the density of that's tremendous. So you get more capacity as a 3PL and as a shipper than you normally would when you're out, I'll call it begging for trailers. This is a way to absolutely build up the amount of freight that you're able to ship in any given direction at any time. So 3PLs are going to benefit because they can use the same algorithms to plan loads two at a time instead of one at a time.
And how about shippers? Because shippers could have touch points at the dock, at distribution centers, at warehouses, all throughout their mix. So they have a lot to consider here too, especially with giving and receiving the freight. So we can end on them. Where should they be at?
Yeah, absolutely. Shippers, I think, are going to stand to benefit tremendously through the increase in available resources, available capacity. So instead of reaching out and looking for capacity that may or may not be there, brokering that freight because they can't find a tractor in real time to get that done, the shipper now has the capacity to find two at a time to get the loads planned, to get them shipped, to get them on the road, and really is a higher touch point, in terms of these relays between point A and point B. The shipper is really going to be the one who's going to add capacity as a result of that and potentially lower their expenses related to the purchase transportation cost.
So, Glenn, in your estimation, how far away from seeing this as widespread, moving from these test lanes that we see out in the Southwest, the desert Southwest, et cetera, where they are actually moving some freight, but away from that and it's widespread common practice?
Yeah, I think we're going to be probably the latter part of this decade before we really have enough lanes and enough density to prove that the model is going to work long term. It will work. It absolutely will work because the economics are so compelling. We'll find a way to do that. But I think at the onset, we're going to just see limited production rolling out in lanes that are designed specifically to handle this type of equipment and to run this type of freight. And I think we're going to see that probably for the next several years as the vehicles themselves prove that they're as safe as or safer than the regular trucks that are running today with the human driver at the wheel.
Now, Glenn, before I let you go, let me ask you something, because we started the show talking about Lonnie Johnson, and he made the Super Soaker while trying to make a space injector. You're an inventor yourself. You made these driverless mirrors. You think you're in danger of making the next great summer toy? By accident?
I don't know. I could think about that, but I'll tell you, when I was watching your show and hearing that, it was a great throwback to my childhood as well, and I miss those Soakers. I think they're well worth it. I hadn't thought about putting a bleach in there. I may have done that as a young man, but I think it's a great invention. We'll see if I can come up with something new next, but I'm looking forward to it. It's a lot of fun.
Well, Glenn, we got a lot of faith in you. For people who want to get prepared for this incoming storm of autonomous trucking, the end of the decade, where should we send them to?
Yeah, drop a note to info@locomation.ai. Info@locomation.ai.